Hello, everybody, and welcome into episode 78 of the Dorton and Doetkott Debate Podcast. I am Lucas Dorton. Nick Duckett's here. Nick, we have a guest on our show today that I'm very excited for. He is the man, the myth, the legend, the manager of the Arlington A's, Alex Reichenbach, our manager. Reichy, how you doing?
I'm happy and excited to finally be here, even though you guys definitely gave Mitchell the chance to one up me, and we're never about letting Gaylord beat us at anything. Not coin flips, not rock paper scissors, and definitely not about getting on the Dorton and Duckett debate podcast first. So a little
Yeah,
disappointed in you guys for that one.
and
Despite the
that's on
fact
me.
Alex has wanted on for 3 years, we finally let him on.
Yeah. Like we said on the show with Mitchell there, that was definitely on us. I think we had asked you to come on about 10,000 times, and the day would come and something would come up for either Nick or I, and we'd be like, "Oh, we're gonna have to move it." But we knew that you were just gonna knock it out of the park. So whatever bar Mitchell set, we knew you were just gonna blow it out of the water. So
Exactly. Exactly. It's like in a
doesn't even
talent
matter.
show, like America's Got Talent. The audition is like your C, and then you come with the B, and then you come with the A. We had to bring Mitchell in first. He's the C.
Well,
We need to go
Mitchell
up.
at least Mitchell at least set the Townball bar relatively high compared to the bar Deco set for talking about hockey, which is on the floor somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue that. I can't argue that.
Well, a bar is a bar. Someone has to set it regardless of where it is. So Nick just took that honor for us here for that. Uh we're gonna get right into it. Alex, once again, thank you for joining the show. Definitely appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to chatting some town ball here. So we're gonna start off. This is my favorite question to ask everyone that comes on the show is who, when you were growing up, was your favorite MLB player to watch that like this was your guy. Now, it's kind of a two-parter. So I'm going to give me your favorite twin of all time and then just non-twin MLB player of all time.
I feel like I should.
So my favorite twin growing up was Jock Jones. I actually have an autographed Jock Jones bat at home. But so I'm just a little bit ahead of like Mitchell and Deco and those guys with the twins. And just, I remember Joe Mauer's rookie year, but I did catch like some of the like 99, 2000, 2001 twins
I mean,
when they
I
still weren't
remember
very good.
Jock, but I mean, it was probably a year or two's worth with Jock and Hunter and Stewart, Koski. But yeah, I was pretty young then.
I mean, I remember the trade for Shannon Stewart. So, but Jock Jones had a cool name, and he was a lefty that batted leadoff, and hit 20 leadoff home runs the one year when they weren't very good. But
I think he hit
I
one of
always
the
liked
playoffs against the Yankees. I think.
could have. I think that was later, but
Yeah.
I always thought Ron Coomer had a great name too, and Corey Koski had a great name. So those are probably my second and third favorite twins. It seemed kind of odd to like Torrey Hunter because everyone else liked Torrey Hunter, and I've never been one to go with the flow on that. And
I feel that.
but I remember my first Twins game was on Labor Day of I want to say 2001, and David Ortiz hit a home run, and then they ended up losing to the Baltimore Orioles 2-1, and Matt Lawton hit one, bases loaded, 2 outs, down by one in the bottom of the ninth, and drilled one to the warning track, and their center fielder made a diving catch on the warning track to end the game. So it was a pretty. The heartbreak started right away for my Twins fandom in that regard.
Tell me about it.
As far as non-twins that I like, I've always just been super partial to Carlos Beltran. So in the early 2000s, when he was with the Kansas City Royals and the Twins and the Royals would battle for the division, and he was just a thorn in their side. And he's this fast, switch hitting center fielder. So he had power from both sides of the plate, could steal bases, had a cannon of an arm in the outfield, made lots of great catches. the year he got traded from Kansas City to Houston, and he just went nuts in Houston. And a big part of that influence too is one of my first baseball video games was MVP Baseball 2004 on the GameCube.
Oh yeah.
And I just loved getting Beltran and his 90 speed on there. So you had the power, the speed, the defense, stick him right in the two hole there and, let him go. And so I've always been kind of partial to Carlos Beltran, even though some of his antics since then and his involvement in maybe being involved in the Houston cheating scandal tarnished his image a little bit.
Do you think Beltran is a Hall of Famer? His numbers are he's really close.
I mean, there were years where like I took Carlos Beltran like number 3 overall in fantasy baseball, or maybe even number 1 overall in fantasy baseball. Like that's how big of a fan of him I was. I'd have to look back at his numbers again to see if he's a Hall of Famer, but I mean, like I said, I've always been partial to him. I followed his career from Kansas City to Houston to the New York Mets, and then it kind of he wasn't really a regular anymore after that when he went to the Yankees, but always kind of kept track of him.
Yeah, he's good.
That's cool. Yeah, that's I don't know. I just always am interested to hear where people's MLB and sports fandoms come. Sometimes they're all the same, which is fine, but then you get the obscure ones like Jock Jones being your favorite player, and like those are the ones that I think are really cool.
I could also throw out like my favorite probably fantasy baseball player of all time was Troy Tulowitzki, because I remember doing the research on his before and after the All-Star break numbers in fantasy baseball, and he was always garbage in April, so I was always able to trade for him. And then he'd heat up, and like he would single-handedly win matchups just when he'd get out of tear and start hitting bombs.
Oh, my boy. Too low.
Hey,
and I think to this day, I think if you go on my original Yahoo account, I think the picture is still Troy Tulowitzki, because he was my keeper in fantasy baseball for so long.
He was like the first of the. He was like the first power hitting shortstop in a long time.
Well, he was so different. I mean, you had these small speedster shortstops that came in, and Tulowitzki came in at a Cal Ripken Jr. type build, just big dude who could hit bombs, was good on his feet, played
a missile of an arm
defense.
If I remember correctly, he went to college at Long Beach State, right?
Yep.
And he played shortstop, and because he was so good at shortstop, that's why Evan Longoria got bumped off to shortstop to third base. So imagine that left side of the infield.
Yeah, Longo and Tulo. Yeah.
They played with each other in college?
Mm-hmm.
I believe so. I think they went to the same college.
Yeah, I think they had. I don't know how much crossover they had, but
Long Beach State, interesting. Yeah, that's a good left side.
Yeah,
it's almost as good as Dos and Dos over there.
It's close. I don't know if you can beat that. It's right up there. It's right up there, though. So I'm gonna get into it here a little bit, Alex. Talk to me a little bit about your playing experience as a baseball player. Growing up, did you kind of do one position? Did you stick to a position, or how did that work? What was your baseball playing career like growing up, and then I guess still now, technically?
I started playing t-ball as soon as I can remember. I mean, I must have been 4 years old when we started playing t-ball. Preschool, kindergarten, playing t-ball in the summer, and that fed into the summer rec program that we've talked quite a bit about. I know Nick has played in the summer rec program, and Mitchell. That's actually how I met Mitchell. Like when I was in college, I came back and I actually ran the summer rec program for 3 years. And Mitchell was a 9th grader that year, and he was my guy. Whatever I needed, catcher, Mitchell was back there. Pitcher, he was there. Wherever I needed someone, Mitchell was there. And I also remember taking kind of an aside here. My umping career started with summer rec. So I remember doing some of the Arlington games where Deco was probably a 9th grader or even an 8th grader for $15 a game, standing on the mound behind the pitcher.
I was saying some rec they stood behind the mound. It was so weird.
Well, you're getting paid $15 a game, and you're a high school kid who's not even certified. I didn't have any, I didn't even have gear So, but even if you had gear, you weren't going to go sit behind the home plate for $15 in a summer rec game. But as far as my playing career went, after that, I got into the traveling bi-county league. So I know if you ever get Agri going, he talks a lot about the 7th, 8th grade traveling bi-county league with Whitey Hurd. And then I played school ball, and a big influence in both my playing career and coaching career was when I had my JV years with Chad Dose. So I spent a lot of time sitting on the pine next to Chad Dose, just soaking in the knowledge. But when I was growing up, I fancied
football. Yeah.
Growing up, I fancied myself a third baseman. I thought I was Chipper Jones over there, and never really had the glove or the arm for it. But I never really could stick at second. And now I realize it was because I could never read the top spin when you get that weird spin on the right side. So guys who struggle with second base or right field, that's a real thing, because the righty inside out's the ball and you get that spin away, versus on the left side at third base, it's squared up and it's hit true, so it's a lot easier to feel. The last years I started, I started for Whitey. My 8th grade year, I was a 6-hitter and a center fielder, and I probably hit 300 that year. But as you move up the ladder, Whitey was a great coach, and it took a lot of effort, for a lot of work and a lot of effort for me to be a painfully average, mediocre player. And after 8th grade, when the innings started to dwindle and the reps started to dwindle, and the mechanics just went away. So I progressively sat on the bench more and more. I played JV as a junior. I was that guy that wasn't getting a lot of time on varsity, and it was better to go play right field on JV than it was to sit on the varsity bench. But my senior year, believe it or not, I was still a pretty quick guy. So I got to be the designated courtesy runner for the catcher always. And so every game I got to play a lot of games my senior year as the runner for the catcher. And I always tell people I scored from first base on a single at Bell Plain, because it was a 3-2 pitch, and he hit a single to right field. And so, 3-2, I'm breaking on the pitch, and he hits it to right field. So right away, I'm thinking first to third, and I'm hustling, and Tackman's over there waving me, and I'm booking it. And I ended up scoring standing up. And when I asked the guys what happened, they said, yeah, you were running, and the right fielder bobbled the ball and threw it away, so there was never even a throw. So that's one of my claims to fame, is I was fast enough at one point to score from first base on a single. And
we've got Byron Buxton in our midst.
Well, I'm not quite that fast anymore, but both runs I've scored for the A's have been from second base. One was a Michael Bullard grounder to shortstop, and I was on second, and I came around third, and they spiked it into the dirt, and the first baseman dropped it, and I never slowed down. I belly flopped into home plate.
Yep, I remember
and
that.
Then the other one was a 2-out Ben Brinkman single to left field, where he hit it. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to have to try to score on this with 2 outs. So hustling around third. But nowadays, I pretty much stick to right field or first base. I play first base for my softball team, because I'm the only one willing to stand in front of some of the guys on the left side that throw the ball. and I'm about the only one on that team that could scoop it. So, and then my last start for the A's, I played 7 innings at first base, because we got 10 runs. Pico got shelled on the mound by Watertown.
Hey, I had the
sacrificial lamb.
I think I had the only 2 team hits, and I threw a complete game, even though it was a complete game. 10-run runnable loss. It's still a CG.
We turned 2 double plays that game. It had a shot at a third one, except Seth booted it, because our infield I was at first base, Seth Verdeen was at second base, Ben Brinkman was at shortstop, and Luke Dose was at third. And then our outfield was like O'Day,
Nate Templin,
and Nate Templin. So that was the old playing career.
That was a game, man. Wow.
And then I actually played VFW for Paul Pickelman, who's the JV coach now at Sibley East. And then the first year I didn't play baseball was Legion. After my senior summer, I decided I was sick of sitting on the bench, and wanted to go party with my friends that summer. And I still played a couple times as a sub when they needed a guy. But I thought that was the end of the road for my baseball career. I was done. But then my brother Edward, who was younger and better than me, and as you know, he played D2 baseball and then went and played pro baseball for the the Roswell Invaders in the Pecos League was his first professional baseball job, and then he was in
like New Mexico.
Yep, Roswell, New Mexico. So that they had the ugliest green uniforms. They were like alien colored. So you guys know Ed's really good at baseball, and I remember summer rec. I was a ninth grader, and the teams were always fourth and fifth grade, sixth and seventh grade, eighth and ninth grade. Well, we didn't have enough eighth and ninth graders, so Ed got moved up as a seventh grader, and I was a ninth grader. And I started at third and batted fifth, and Ed started at first and batted sixth the first game. That was the last time the coach ever made that mistake of having me hit in front of him in the order, because Ed was a much better hitter. But so fast forward a few years, Ed's signing for the Islanders as a 16, 17-year-old kid in 2011. And so I was going to a lot of Gaylord Islanders games. And finally I asked Mike Walsh, I'm like, hey, I'm coming to all these games. Like, you guys need like first base coach? I'd be willing to do that. And he's like, yeah, sure, we'll take a first base coach. And then it was, well, why don't you sign a contract in case we need you in an emergency? And then it turned into, here, why don't you get in blowouts and get 5 at bats a year? And I wound up, the official stats say I had 3 hits as a Gaylord Islander, but it was only 2. One was a catcher's interference. I literally hit it out of a Glencoe Brewer's glove.
Nice.
But my only 2 hits as an Islander are against the New Ulm Kaiserhof. And as you know, Lucas, there is no New Ulm Kaiserhof. So that's how long ago those 2 hits were. So from
Alex
2011 through
they decided to fold.
Yeah, well, I would too if anyone giving up hits to me should immediately just retire and quit, because that's pretty pathetic. I'm like I must be like 2 for 80 in my amateur career at getting hits. So
that's like Cleveland.
So when you
hit to Lucas Dorton.
Well, like Dorton, was that your first at bat or second at bat? You came in and cracked a hit. I'm like, God, everyone's better than me.
I think that was my second at bat. I think I walked your first at bat and then ended up getting around and scoring. And then my second at bat, I took a Nick Deco wheelhouse fastball right at about the shoulders here, and somehow just muscled one out to left field. And that was my first career, and so far my only hit as an Arlington Egg.
Well, that's more hits than I have as an Arlington A, and I've been on the team since 2018, and I still don't have a hit. Like, that's kind of the last thing I'm holding on to. Like, I just want 1 hit as an A, and then I can finally hopefully retire as a player. I don't need any more games after that. But
hang up the
like I said, they put me on the roster, and I was first base coach over there, and then I would serve as third base coach when Mike was gone oftentimes, and eventually the Arlington managerial position opened up, and I'm looking at trying to develop a baseball coaching career, and it seemed like a logical next step to throw my hat into that ring, and here we are.
Well, that kind of segues into my next question that I had. You mentioned it a little bit about going over from Gaylord to Arlington, and you kind of wanted to progress in your coaching career. What are some memories and things that you learned, while you were in Gaylord, and maybe even prior coaching experience or playing experience that helped prepare you to take on the Arlington managerial role?
I don't mean this as a shot at Gaylord, but I think sitting on the bench over there a lot and just kind of seeing the frustration of some younger guys. So, like, I don't know if you remember Scott Holmquist or Seth, played over there as well. And those guys were young guys. And I remember them being really frustrated by not being able to get into even non-league games. And, in fairness to the people over in Gaylord, like, part of that was Seth and Scotty had some attendance issues. Like, they didn't attend every game, where if they would have been there, they probably would have gotten in, but they weren't getting into the games they got in. So I think the biggest thing I kind of took with me when I came over to Arlington was just to try to make sure people are getting an opportunity, and this kind of gets into the managerial philosophy of, we're always trying to set guys up for success, right? We want to put you in positions to succeed, but sometimes being a manager is letting you prove me right or letting you prove me wrong. Sometimes I got to put you in positions and let you fail to see, why you might not be a starter or things of that ilk. So it's kind of getting you to the realization of what your role is sometimes too, I think is a big part of being a manager. But my first year in Arlington, we went down to Waterville, and they had a little bit different setup for the regional that year. And we had 3 bench players. It was me, O'Day, and Nick Haupt for the first game. And then I remember we had a few more guys for the Blue Earth game. And then after we upset Blue Earth the next day, our bench was me, O'Day, and Scotty Husfeld, who is a left-hander who had thrown 140 pitches the day before. So, it was like, I guess our 9 guys are our 9 guys. We don't have anyone to run, or, there's not really a defensive position switch here. So I think I've made it kind of a focus of being A's manager to try to build out the roster and find some role guys that are willing to play those spots. And I think, ultimately, like Mitchell said, that we got a good crew of guys that are coming to games and understand their roles and are willing to come and sit the bench in league games because they know that they're going to get opportunities to get out on the field and play the game themselves is a big part of the philosophy. And I've been very fortunate that I got hired in January of 2018. And so this is my 7th season as manager, and I've only signed 1 release, and that was for a guy who married the Prior Lake manager's daughter. So that's the reason why he left. And
Makes sense.
So it feels pretty flattering that guys who come to the A's either retire from baseball or they're still here. So that makes me feel pretty good as a manager.
Your first year is when we went to Blue Earth and beat him when Husi threw like 8 or 9 innings, and then Brinkman shut him down. I got lucky when I missed I missed the pop-up miserably, and the dude didn't even run. That was your first year?
Okay. That was my first year. And
what,
we've mentioned before, Deco, like just how Deco in the playoffs finds himself at the middle of every controversy. Like the year before I became manager, the play at the plate against Henderson and Jordan, the Blue Earth pop-up play, the running into the second baseman against Waterville play. Just Nick Doetkott is a magnet.
Previously,
chaos
the first instance was my very first year playing. And it's when we played Gaylord in Gaylord. You were still on Gaylord. I think Andrew Grock was pitching, I think. The 9th inning, we were down by 2 with 1 out. And I swear to God, my literal thought walking to the plate was, well, only 1 out. At least I won't be the last out of the season. That's literally what I thought to myself. I hit it right back to Grock. Not even thinking home and 1's a double play. All of a sudden I see him throw it home. I'm like, oh boy, I got to book it to first. I would have been out. Overthrows it to first into right field. Guy from second comes
Can we
around
preface this by saying this is the most insane baseball play I've ever been a part of or seen?
So there's a force out at home. Then they overthrow it to over the first base. So the guy from second rounds third and scores. The guy from first rounds third, and the throw home gets away. So he scores. And as that's happening, the ball's in the backstop. I, who hit the ball 45 feet or 60 feet, am just continuing to proceed to run. And all of a sudden I'm like, I got a chance. And I don't know if they're even paying attention. So I'm just going to go. Well, I think Grock backed it up, picked it up, and threw it home and tagged me out at home. So there was a force out at home, a tag out at home, and 2 runners scored at home in 1 play. It was an inning-ending, 2-run, game-tying double play.
Yeah,
I don't think I'll ever see a crazier play in my life.
I think the official book on that was a 1-2-9-1-2 double play with 2 RBIs to tie the game and send it to extra innings. And I remember we walked off in the 10th inning on a little.
I think
was that short.
It was to me. Yeah, I played short, and it was like I don't know if I had much of a shot at all, anyways. But I probably didn't play it well. We were kind of like halfway. We were kind of playing an in between depth, and then he hit like a little soft little, I don't know, blooper kind of thing or grounder towards second. And I didn't know whether to go home or whether to go to first. And by the time I decided it was too late. It was over.
One other crazy, insane Deco play that we haven't talked, because we talk about a lot of these plays all the time, just because Deco is Deco. But one other insane Deco play was Deco's first year on Legion, and we had him in right field against Jordan in the tournament.
Yes.
And they had the bases loaded and hit a single to right field. And so the first run, I think, scored, but the guy is coming from second. And Deco had just hosed somebody the day before. So I'm like, oh, yeah, here we go.
The same exact like spot and everything.
Yeah. And so Deco comes up gunning and throws it and just bounces up over the catcher. I'm like, what the heck happened? Well, the guy had left his bat in the middle of the infield, and Deco hit the bat from right field, and it went over the catcher and wound up being – the guy got all the way around. I don't know if you want to call that a little league home run or an E9 or whatever, but just Deco finds a way to be a part of
unfortunate luck.
Insanity.
Yeah, I remember that now because Paul Glazinski hurt himself. That's why I was in right. And I hosed a guy at the plate the day before, like you said. And then this play, it was like the same exact spots, hit the same exact like line drive. And I'm like, oh, this is deja vu. And I throw it, and my throw the previous day was really good. And this day, it wasn't a terrible throw, but it was offline a little bit. And yeah, of course, it hits the bat and just goes 30 feet behind Georgie, and we were hosed.
Yeah, I missed your outfield assist the day before because, like, I think Paul Gozinski had broken his ankle. And so I'm on the bench, like, with the trainer trying to help Paul. And I have my back to the infield. I hear everyone cheering, and guys are running off the field because Deco just hosed the guy.
Yeah, I like immediately got one hit to me when I went out there. Got I forgot about that.
So you did mention a little bit about summer rec ball and coaching that. So we had a fan send in a question, and that fan was Gaylord Islanders manager Mitchell Matthews. He said, ask him about coaching Mitchell himself in summer rec against Nick. What was that like?
Oh, I gotta hear that.
So I really don't remember coaching against Nick in summer rec, but I do remember the year that I had Mitchell in summer rec. We hosted the summer rec tournament in Gaylord, so it was at Walsh Field, and we were down. Mitchell had started the game. We were down 4-0 against Arlington in the championship, and we had somehow loaded the bases, and Travis Schmidt was up. Who was, Travis Schmidt, he's pretty good, but like as a ninth grader, he was one of those guys that developed early and just was like a 700 hitter and a monster. And so he comes up and crushes one to the warning track in Gaylord, which as a ninth grader in summer rec is a shot. And so he has a bases clearing triple. It's 4-3. And former Arlington A, Dylan Pauly, I remember, was the pitcher for Arlington. And we wound up stealing home to tie the game in Gaylord, which was nuts. And I think we wound up losing in extra innings. And Mitchell had started the game and thrown like 4 innings and then gone to catcher for, I think, 3 innings. And then the game went to extras. And we put Mitchell back in as the pitcher. So if that tells you a little bit about rubber arm or former rubber arm Mitch Matthews and how he was as a ball player. Mitch has been my guy for a lot of years as a player. And one of my favorite Mitchell stories is in Legion when he was playing third base, and we're in Glencoe, and it's the first inning, and gets a ball smashed right at him, and it takes a bad hop and smokes him in the face. And so I could see the blood running off his mouth and his nose as he's going to pick up the ball and guns the guy out at first base.
Wow.
And then comes off and gets the blood dealt with. I'm pretty sure that was the same game that Deco nearly blew by throwing a changeup in the bottom of the 7th with the tying run on second. The guy whacked it down the line, and it went about that far foul. And I'm like, don't throw it again.
Yep.
So that was, I believe, the beginning of.
Is that the game that Alex Troska hit a home run?
I think Troska hit a home run, and then because Scotty Holmquist, I think, started.
Yep, Scott Holmquist started.
And he gave up a home run in the first inning and then threw pretty well after that. We brought in Nick to slam the door, and he decided for whatever reason to throw the first changeup of his entire life with 2 outs and
Give him a
run on
Trevor
second
Hoffman
base.
changeup.
No,
And I just
Luke-
in the dugout like, no. And then it landed foul. And I'm like, nice pitch. Don't throw it again.
I remember that. I remember those exact words. Yep. No, Lucas went to college with Troska, so we know Troska pretty well. I didn't really know him that well at the time, but yeah, he hosed that. He drilled that one to center. But I think Scotty did really good besides that. And then yeah, we almost blew it. And I remember that was the exact words you said. I remember that vividly. And yeah, but
You know, I don't know if this is supposed to be the roast Duckett podcast.
Oh,
but
I'm all here for it. I'm here
go
for it.
Another Glencoe story is we're in Glencoe and we have the bases loaded with 2 outs.
Oh,
and it's a 3-2
this was the
pitch.
worst base running mistake of my
Nick-
career.
Nick gets picked off of second on the 3-2 pitch.
Yeah.
Like, there's a guy in front of you, Nick. Where are you going? Like, so
Yeah,
the pitcher
that was-
picked up his leg and Nick took off and he stepped to second. So Nick had nowhere to go because there's a runner standing on third. So it was the easiest pick off in history because he had nowhere to go. So
Well,
he just ran right at him and he was out.
Technically, it ended up Colin Pouch got tagged out in between third and home. It was clearly my fault, but yeah, that was probably the worst base running mistake I've ever made. I had the one last year where I ran to third, then realized Luke Dose was standing on third. That was bad. But yeah, my thought was 3-2, 2 outs. I know we can break on the pitch, and there's been a decent amount of times, like in my A's career, where I've scored from second on a ground ball because like I just wait for him to throw it to third, especially with 2 outs, as soon as or throw from third to first, and I just book it. And my thought was, I can get a good lead because you know we're gonna get a steal. And my thought should have been, hey, I get to steal anyways. Stay close, and you'll be fine. But my thought was, all right, let's get a good lead, a good jump, and then even if it's a grounder, if they screw up or something, I'm gonna score from second. And then I just got too antsy. They must have seen that because I'm surprised he would have even tried to pick me off at second. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh no, I'm hosed. And then it ended up Colin got in the pickle and got tagged out. And that was with Shane Hankey up with 2 outs, bases loaded. And the worst part of it all, for my sake, I pitched that game, and it was one of the better games I pitched. I think I threw like 6 or 7 innings and only like 1 earned, which for me, it was rare, especially at that time. So I just hosed myself out of getting run support because I think it was like 1-0 or something like that. At the
I
time.
believe it was a 3-2 game, and
3-2. It was a
Trevish,
1-run
who I coached
game.
with. Yeah, Colt Trevish, who I coached with at GFW, stole home, which is a trend we're finding in these stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was the game
formulator
when he stole home.
Yeah, I remember that.
3-1 was the final score of that game. Let's see.
Yeah, I think I pitched like
Nick
5
Duckett,
or 6.
6 1/3, 6 1/3, 104 pitches, 1 run.
Yeah,
6 strikeouts. Sorry, 2 strikeouts.
I was gonna say 6
You only gave up
strikeouts.
You had 2 strikeouts.
You pulled that up that
2 hits,
fast?
but oh yeah, because it was from my first year, so it was pretty easy.
I said that was one
And
of the
then-
better games I've ever pitched because I don't claim to be the greatest pitcher, and at that time I still don't throw that hard, but at that time I really didn't, and I was feeling it that day for whatever reason.
So needless to say, Dorton, I got a lot of decoy stories over the years.
Oh yeah, he's at the
Stuff
center
like
of all
that.
the controversial plays.
There's another one. It's not necessarily me, but I was involved in it, kind of. And I think Alex was coach. I'm not positive. Did you coach when Matt Pick played for a bit?
No,
Brecky?
so Pick quit right after I was hired to go to
Okay.
Avon.
I guess maybe not then. It would have been the year before Alex got there. There was a time, I think we were playing, I want to say, I'm going to say Belle Plaine, but I'm not positive. And so the guy tagged up from second to third on a fly ball. And we said he left early. So we went to, check or whatever.
Appeal.
So we appeal. There you go. So he gave it a pick. Pick stepped off, threw it to me at second. As he's just throwing it, basically in not even live, basically to me, he throws it 5 feet over my head in a center field. The dude who's now on third, who take from second, runs home. The center fielder proceeds to get it, finally get it to me at second base, and the dude's called out at second.
Oh, wow.
Which he should have just gone back to second, and he eventually would have been up safe. But he probably either was just hoping to get away with it or thought he didn't leave early. And then after he's already touched home plate, was finally rolled out at second. It was kind of a crazy play. I had never seen that before.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. So,
For sure.
yeah. So next question I have for you. Obviously, you, Alex, have done some coaching of high school players. You obviously have some now as well, being on the Arlington A's. And you also now have also been coaching a lot of non-high school, college, out of college folks as well too. So what's your strategy as far as I guess coaching high school more and then bringing it into Townball? Are there similar things that you take from both of them? Are there different coaching methods? What do you take away from going high school to Townball?
In Townball, you don't have to spend as much time telling guys about the strategy of the game and what to do. So a lot of times it's just kind of pointing them in the direction you want the boat rowed. And I know at different points in time, some guys want more say in the decisions and some guys want no say in the decisions. And so a lot of managing is just picking a direction to point everyone in to, get them going the same direction. I really, emphasize the term manager in Townball because it is managing adults.
Yeah.
I always say the big difference between Townball, amateur ball, and high school is, like I get a lot of F words thrown back at me when guys aren't happy in Townball, whereas you don't get that kind of back talk when you're coaching summer rec or Legion or high school ball. They're 16, 17, 18-year-old kids versus 25-year-old adults who have 2 kids and a mortgage who are saying you're an idiot. We should do it this way instead.
2 kids and a mortgage.
only with a lot more colorful language. So
That's funny.
but ultimately, at the end of the day, baseball is still baseball, whether it's professional baseball, town team baseball, high school baseball, and you're just kind of adjusting the framework of your decision making based on the talents and abilities of the players available. And you guys and Mitchell kind of touched on that already with the differences in the pitching quality and the differences in catchers throwing out runners much more regularly in town team and those sorts of things. And you just have to adjust your if it was a video game, it'd be the sliders on the aggressiveness, to calibrate it for the level that you're working with at the time.
Is it hard to make that switch? Like if you're coaching high school one day and
Which
and then you have Townball the next, which sometimes that happens. Is that a tough, you had this whole, and I know you kind of talked about a little bit, baseball is baseball. I agree 100% too. But is it tough to get out of one mindset that you had 24 hours before and bring it into a different mindset, or is that a pretty easy switch for you?
I mean, my mindset as a third base coach a lot of times is to be aggressive on the bases, and so having speed demons like Nick Doetkott on the bases really helps. Get the windmill going, and sometimes I don't even need the windmill going, and Deco goes. But so the aggressive mindset on the bases doesn't change too much because I'm looking to make guys make a play, and a lot of times I make the argument that as a third base coach, the math in your head isn't, will this guy be out or safe? Because that's a much more black and white question that people ask themselves. But, sometimes in your head, you're looking at who's the on deck batter and what's the percent chance that they get a hit. And so obviously you guys know I track all the Arlington A game on iScore. So for a lot of my tenure as coach, the batting average has been between, 200 and 240. So most of the time you can bet that as hitters, we got about a 1 in 4 to a 1 in 5 chance of getting a hit. So, when you do that math, all right, now Now I don't need the guy to be safe 100% of the time. I just need him to be safe 26% of the time, and I'm making a profit, right? If we want to get into blackjack and gambling and the game theory and all that, but so I've always been a pretty aggressive base running coach, and that translates to both Legion, high school, town team. Where I sometimes have to catch myself is in town team, I can trust the Lucas Doses of the world, the Nathan Thomases of the world, the Austin Brockoffs of the world to kind of have their head in the game and not need to be told, where to go with the ball on a certain play versus in high school. They're not as good at visualizing and seeing plays ahead of time and knowing the situation. So it's a lot more, I got to stay on top of verbally reminding guys of, all right, if it's hit hard at you, let's try to turn two, first and second, if it's hit to third base, if it's to your left, go to second for the double play. If it's hit to your right, step on third and go one. Those sorts of little reminders for guys are a lot more necessary at those younger levels than they are at the town team level.
But you still have to remind your shortstop when it's me on the daily to pay attention as I'm chatting up the second baseman.
Well, I remember it. So it's a Gaylord Islanders game in Arlington, and McCoy Rodning is up, and McCoy is a very smart, heady ball player, and will drop down a bunt. Yeah. And so I'm yelling at Deco. I'm like, Deco, he might bunt, move up. And Deco is just in the midst of a full blown conversation with Chip Wolverton, who was coaching third that day. And I say it, and Deco just keeps right on going with his conversation. I'm like, Deco, and he doesn't do anything. And Deco. And about the fourth time I said Deco, he's like, I heard you, Reiki. I'm like, well, you could have acknowledged, like, giving me a wave or, like a hat tip or giving me some sort of acknowledgement that you heard me. And so that's, if you ever watch Deco, you come to an A's game and watch Deco in the outfield and he's looking around and all the other butterflies.
I can't deny.
Shoulder shake.
I can't deny. I was just thinking, because you start out with Summer Rec. You never had me in Summer Rec, but I believe you coached me in Legion both my years.
Yeah, because I think sorry, my computer's dying, so I'm grabbing my charger here.
And now you coach me in A's, because I remember I heard you were applying for the A's coach, and I'm like, oh yeah. I'm not just saying to say this, but I'm like, oh yeah, I hope Ricky gets it. He did a good job in Legion. I think, have you coached me more than any other player?
Oh, easily more than any other player, because I had you. Did I have you even in VFW, or was
That's
it
unfortunate?
Your ninth grade year of?
I don't think Legion. I had you for VFW, because I think I had Bryce Eggert one year, and I had Michael Bullard one year. I think I just had you in Legion, but I had you 2 years in Legion, because like Brockoff and Bullard, you would have only had 1 year.
Yeah, because my VFW team was like Pouch and Pauly and those guys.
Well, that would be me.
Were you on that spot? Yeah, so I must have had you in VFW.
Then I must have had you. Yeah.
In 2014.
I'm so sorry, Ricky.
Because I think like Lucas and Austin, you only had for Legion 1 year.
Yep.
Whereas me, you would have had twice. And then we both been on the A's ever since you. So I'm honored.
I have you at 133 games out of 143 in the iScore app.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
We don't take off days. Just 10 of them.
me and Deco spent a lot of time on the ball field together. So that's why we have all those stories.
That's why we have our plentiful disagreements over Facebook and in the dugouts, and
I hate to say it to you, Deco, but a lot of your Facebook posts remind me of me from about 5 years ago, or maybe even a little longer. Just finally coming around on the miserable, cynical Minnesota sports fan, and just I can't emphasize it to you enough how similar a lot of those posts are. So I don't know if that's good for you or bad for you.
You're saying in 5 years I'll understand what you think about me, because I'll think about myself 5 years ago.
Well, you probably, maybe, yeah. But there'll probably be some new hotshot kid that's like in his mid-20s of, I don't know, like maybe Evan Pouch will turn into the next Nick Duckett.
There we go.
You'll be seeing his Facebook posts and like, what?
I'll be honored to mentor him into the.
No. That's okay. That's okay.
Oh, I know deep down everybody's just waking up every morning waiting for that first Nick Duckett Facebook post about what happened the day prior.
What I don't understand, Deco, is you have all these Facebook posts and you have all these tweets, and theoretically, this is why you started the podcast. And you come on here and you just have like the most mundane milk toast takes.
You know, bashing our podcast, I tell you. No, you're not
Jeez,
entirely
this
wrong.
guy.
Well, Lucas and I just agree on a
The
lot of
host
stuff.
is very handsome and has a very good voice. I don't know about the other guy.
Thank you.
Lucas and I just agree on a lot of stuff. We have two great minds think alike. Okay, we have had our fair share of arguments offline though. A couple of them I definitely lost. I remember I was adamant Christian McCaffrey. I was adamant Christian McCaffrey is not the best running back in the league, and finally, I've said, yeah, Lucas, I think I was wrong about that one.
Dwayne Haskins is my boy.
I wasn't going to bring him up, but yeah, Dwayne Haskins. I told Lucas he's bad. Well, I think I was right. Rest in peace.
Anywho,
Lucas is also a little more capable of paying attention when filming. Like half the time you're texting or something.
Okay, seriously, no. I watched part of our podcast the other day, one of our old ones, and I looked at myself. I'm like, God, I look clueless. I look really bad. Lucas is probably thinking, God, my partner sucks. So I've tried to do a much better job today of actually looking at the gosh darn screen. You know, I have anxiety. I wander. Okay, all right. Sorry.
You're gonna have to change it to the Dorton and Reichenbach debate podcast,
featuring
I think
30% of the time when he's paying attention.
I think you guys got to get Shane on more. I mean, did you see that setup he had?
Electric.
He's all ready to go for a podcast.
Shane was good.
That was an electric show.
Put us to shame. What didn't you comment on that? Something like you had some comment on there about Shane's setup compared to me, if I remember correctly. That was pretty funny, but I don't remember what it was.
So steering back on track here, getting back onto the Townball chat a little bit. Obviously, Alex, you have some pretty deep Gaylord ties. You obviously kind of briefly mentioned it a little bit now with your coaching career, some playing career. Now, on the Arlington side of things, being the head coach Arlington A's, now having Arlington ties. So we talked about it with Mitchell a little bit last week about the Gaylord Arlington rivalry. You have been on now both sides of the ball. So I'm just gonna give the floor to you on this one. Talk to me a little bit about the Gaylord Arlington rivalry and just whatever, what it means to you and such, and take it whatever direction you want to, really.
I mean, it like a lot of baseball stuff, it comes back to those summer rec days where back when I played summer rec, and so my parents were divorced. I actually when I moved, so my dad lives 3 miles south of Arlington, and then my parents got divorced in 1996. So I was 4 years old, and I moved to Gaylord. So growing up, I always went to elementary in Gaylord, and always, all the way through played t-ball in Gaylord. And then once I hit 4th grade through 9th grade, played summer rec in Gaylord. 7th and 8th grade traveling league was in Gaylord. So always played for Gaylord. And if you talk to the Rodnings, they're like, yeah, he's a traitor. He was a Gaylord boy through and through, and he went over to Arlington. And a lot of guys over there wish me luck, but McCoy and Eric were like, that guy's a traitor. They're still bitter about it. But that rivalry started back in the summer rec days, and Gaylord had so many kids out back in those days that we actually had 2 squads at every level. And so like Angry was always a year older than me and was a Gaylord kid and was my teammate on a lot of those summer rec teams. And I think out of 6 years I was in summer rec, we won 4 championships, and we whooped Arlington every year. And it wasn't always that way. When we were in the tournament, we were always rooting to play either the other Gaylord team or Arlington, and inevitably they'd run into each other. So that's kind of where it started. I don't have as many of the growing up Arlington Gaylord memories as some guys. My first introduction to Gaylord Islanders baseball was when I was a kid. I don't know if you're aware of this, Lucas, but that big white building out behind the Gaylord ball field is a roller rink. So my parents would drop me off with $5-10 on a Friday night, and we'd go to the roller rink for 3 hours and get all the the candy and soda you could in 3 hours and go around in the circles at the roller rink. And if you stopped on the one side, you could peek through the screen and see the ball field, and you could see the scoreboard of the Islanders game. So that's my first memories of Islanders baseball.
Yeah.
After I joined the team in 2011, the first Arlington Gaylord game I remember, Josh Gazzo, who went to your alma mater, Bethany Lutheran, he played baseball at Bethany. He threw 9 innings against Arlington and like 100-some pitches, and he was going up against Joe Lucas, who threw 11 innings and like 180 pitches.
Yeah.
And the game, Gaylord lost that game on a fly ball to center field where Colin stepped in like a hole out there or a gap and kind of stumbled and hit his palm, and he dropped the ball. And I want to say it was a 2-1 game, and so that my first Arlington Gaylord game, 2 pitchers went in, and when they came out, they were never the same after that. Like Josh, hasn't been the same pitcher ever since that day, and Joe, kind of became a closer after that because he could, was never really the same after that either. So that was an 11 inning. I mean, it was probably more than that. He threw 11 innings. Like,
yeah, I've heard 200. I don't know what the actual number is, but it was a lot.
Yeah. It had to have been a lot because that I do, like, it had to have been a lot because there aren't a lot of guys that can go 9 innings under 130 pitches, much less 11 innings. So
I'll have to ask him if he actually knows what the number was. When
I was in Gaylord, and some of the Legion guys like name, I actually picture at Arlington, Lucas Bullard, and he's like, not my Legion, can't let my Legion kid strike me out. No. But over the years, when I was at Gaylord, we were about 500 against Arlington, and then when I came to Arlington, we lost the first 9 games against Gaylord, and then now we've won the last 4 out of 5. So you guys were talking about that last week, what the record is. So in my career, I'm 4-10 against Gaylord if we include playoff games and such.
How many ejections?
1 ejection, and that was Caleb Dose's first game against Gaylord.
Oh man, I still remember seeing you pull up in a lawn chair in left field. That was epic.
I've heard
well,
that
you have to leave the property.
Yeah.
So I was out in left field across the road because you have to leave the property. So I was sitting in a lawn chair across the road. And
I remember, I don't even remember what position I was playing, but I remember I just look over. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's Alex.
No. And so when I got ejected, it was 4-1 in the top of the 4th. And I went up
the Nathan
to
Hankey play at first, I think, right?
Yep. With Wild Bill Ryan as the first base umpire. And God, Hank Henches was the home plate guy who ultimately he tossed me for abusive equipment. So if you ever see the video, it's when I throw the helmet when I get back to the dugout, he tosses me in.
Oh, really?
But so the run didn't count because he was out. We actually had scored 2 runs on the play, so it would have been 4-3 instead of 4-1, and they called him out at first base. And like we knew he was safe. Eric Gates was at first base and knew he was safe because he started chasing Nathan, trying to tag him on his way to second.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get tossed. I go uptown and to Nison's and grab that 12-pack, and I come back and it's 5-4 Arlington. Like you guys must have just been fired up and we're raking the ball. So, but we ultimately lost that game in extra innings, I think, or no, it wasn't 9. I remember.
I don't remember
because Dan Chess came out for the 7th, and I thought Ben was going to come in, and he walked the leadoff guy, and he wound up scoring to tie the game. And then I forget how we ultimately. I think was that the game where we lost on a pop up to Nate Hankey. Ed skied one about 1 million feet in the air.
I think that's the game. Yes.
And it went off Nate Hankey's palm in extra innings to lose. I think
that's the game. Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that would have been just something to get my first win against Gaylord and not have it count because I was ejected while it was 4-1. I was no longer the acting manager.
I mean, in all honesty, and I do think that was a pretty egregious call. So I'm not at all surprised it happened. Was that your first Arlington Gaylord game or second?
It would have been.
Or
It was actually
later?
my fourth,
Was your fourth?
my first
Oh, okay.
year. Yeah. So the first year we played twice. And then we actually played in the playoffs in Waterville.
Oh yeah.
And we played a pretty good game, but I think we still lost like 5.
Ed hit a double out and left, I think.
Yeah, he hit a double off the top of the fence, and Dan Chess always says, "Well, he hasn't taken me deep yet." And I'm like, "Oh, hitting the top of the fence was about as close as it gets, getting all the way there." So, bulletin board material, Edward.
That's right.
Closer to the board.
Oh, that's good. So, next question I have for you, Alex. Obviously, Townball is a pretty special thing. And anyone, most people probably outside of Minnesota don't really, maybe have never even heard of it, don't understand it, don't get it. So, explain to maybe the people who aren't as familiar with Townball, in your own opinion, your own words, why is it one of the greatest things on earth that only like a handful of states know anything about it?
I'm not really sure how and why it got so popular. If it was World War II taking away kind of the professional sports and then people going to Townball games, or if it was some people say it was the lack of Sunday liquor sales in Minnesota. So you went to the Townball park to get your beer fix on a Sunday and catch a ball game. Arlington at one point was the center of the Minnesota Townball universe. When they had won 5 championships in about what is it, 1967 to 1985. So 17 years they won 5 state championships, and so a couple of those were as a Class B team. So they were playing the heavy hitters, and they had 3 of the top pitchers in the state. I think part of what makes it great too is the dedication of people to the game, and for as maligned as the Minnesota Baseball Association is sometimes, just the efforts they take to make sure that it's not a joke, not a mockery. So just requiring uniforms. You go to your slow pitch softball tournament, and there's 4 different uniforms on the field. So like when we go have A's games, everyone has the same uniform, and the playing of the anthem before the game, and having sanctioned umpires, and having people like the Doses and Nate Thomas and Bill Walsh who make these majestic, pristine ballparks. Because I know when I went down to Albert Lee and I was coaching down there, and I joked to those guys, "Oh, these are a bunch of cow pastures down here," because they don't have quite the same love of baseball down there. And there's a lot of great ballparks in this part of the state, and the River Valley League especially is very well represented on the beautiful ballparks list. So, and just ultimately putting a good product out there. We get a lot of really good athletes that play Townball, like Bud Grant played Townball, and Corey Koski is playing Townball right now. We were just talking about some of my favorite Twins. Corey Koski's playing Townball.
Maybe we could get him on the pod. Good luck with that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, and then the team, the town pride. Like we've joked about Union Hill being a bar, a church, and a ball field, and that's the Townball spirit that I think ultimately is just love of the game.
Absolutely. So now I got to ask, first impressions when Deco comes up to you and says, "Hey, I have another guy that wants to come on your team. He's from Colorado." What were your thoughts right away of me, Alex, putting you on the spot, and be as honest as you want, as you can, because I know how I first started my first impressions, and so don't be shy.
Well, first of all, Deco had tried to get someone else on the team before you that didn't quite work out, and so no offense to him, but what wasn't quite there's a line you have to draw and it can be hard sometimes, but there's a line you have to draw between the seriousness of Townball and, just kind of letting anyone on the team. And so I think when you showed up, actually the first time I saw you was on the golf course at Minneopa, and I'm like, oh, this is a relatively athletic looking guy. I'm like, it was a little more relaxed after that. And then the first practice, and you were lining up at first base. I'm like, I don't know if we need another first baseman. But then you went out and looked fine out in the batting cage. I thought, maybe not special, but it wasn't like you were swinging and missing like I might be up there. I was like, well, we'll give it a shot and see how it works. And I mean, there's been I've had a lot of quote unquote project players on the teams over the years, and some of them haven't worked out. No offense to Nate Templin, but he was a lefty pitcher that we were trying to work with who hadn't played baseball in like 5 years, and trying to get him back. And we spent a year on him trying to get him back into shape, and it just didn't work out for him, and that's okay. But then we have some success stories like untuck Dorton and giving him some opportunities, and turning him into a league game pitcher. And then, like Dominic Templin coming over and finding himself starting playoff games and kind of locking down the center field job last year, and being second on the team in batting average and hits, versus, couldn't get on the field when he was in Gaylord. So, there's success stories, there's lack of success stories, but, I always say coaching and teaching is kind of the curse of eternal optimism, and seeing what a guy could be and might be if you just keep spit shining that turd to turn it into a diamond, I guess. It's kind of part of the deal sometimes in development. So
only Untucked can come in and shut down the Prior Lake Jays.
What can I say? My 40-mile-an-hour curveball, Alex, is that the best pitch? Why is that the best pitch you've ever seen anyone throw?
Why is that?
And why don't you tell every single other person to throw it exactly the same?
Dorton, I think you got to be careful with that, because there's sometimes it's below the hitting speed, and especially that Prior Lake Jays team. I think when we talk about baseball analytics, might have spent a little too much time in the batting cage looking at their exit velo. So that's where you could get a lot of easy pop-ups from those sorts of guys. But this is what and this came from Tex Chapman himself, the Prior Lake manager. He's like, yeah, you guys just went out there and put the ball in play and made the defense make plays, and we were out there looking for exit velo and popping everything up on our front foot. So it's an approach, but you've really got the bulldog mentality of a pitcher. And with actually my last start for Gaylord, I was in right field, and Mitch Matthews was the starting pitcher, and it actually reminds me quite a bit of you as far as he never had a fast fastball. He had a straight ball and a slightly slower straight ball, and then his breaking ball. But he was so what made Mitch good when he was on was his ability to change speeds, and this might be 55 miles an hour, but the next one's 58, and then the next one after that's 52. So it's just enough to throw the timing off, and just enough to miss the barrel of the bat and get out sometimes.
You're making me blush. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me, Mikey. No. In all seriousness, though, I definitely I appreciated you taking a chance on me on the team. Obviously, Nick had never seen me play. No one on the team had ever seen me play. I hadn't played baseball in like 6 years. So that could have definitely had every right in the world to say, screw this guy, don't need him on the team. So I always appreciate you taking the chance to have me on the team, and then, putting me in opportunities and positions to prove my worth on the team, because no one had ever seen me play before. So kind of whatever I did in Townball is the only baseball that anyone knew of me. And so I definitely had to earn my way through it. And I always appreciate you giving me those opportunities and chances to prove myself. So thank you for that.
I mean, it wasn't quite, you're welcome. But it wasn't quite as strange as Shane just sliding into my DMs on Twitter being like,
Yeah.
hey man, can I play baseball? And I'm like, who the heck is this guy?
Oh, catcher
And we found out he
Jordan.
was,
Absolutely.
yeah, he's from Jordan. He must be good at baseball. So then I was like, well, come to I think we were just getting into the playoffs at that time. So we were having, one of our patented Wednesday night practices. And I said, just come on out. And,
Mhm.
I think there is a little bit of, just looking like a ball player when you're out there. So I think sometimes guys get a little down on themselves. They don't hit the ball as far as they can or think they should, or they make an error or make a mistake. And it's like, well, sometimes you got to see the good in what you do. Like,
Yep.
I can't go out. Nobody lets me throw BP for a reason. I'm like, well, Dorton's out here throwing BP, so at least I know he could spot a pitch. So if we just need to get out of an inning sometime, I think I could throw him out there on the mound and at least know he's going to throw a strike and make him hit it. Versus, if we ever had to put me out there, we might, walk 12 guys. So. So it's just kind of looking the part of a ball player sometimes too is a decent part of it. And guys I think sometimes guys think that just anyone can walk out and be on an amateur team, and it's like, well, it's not quite that simple. Like there's and part of what helped you too was just your willingness to be like, yeah, I'm fine sitting on the bench and biding my time and working to earn an opportunity. And it really took. You hate to say it, but it took kind of 3 years to really get a full blown opportunity.
Yep.
So and part of that was work schedule. Weren't always available for non-league games the first couple of years, where you might have gotten more chances if the work schedule had lined up. But like I said, putting guys in a position to succeed. We're getting blown out by 17 against Bird Island. Well, let's put Dorton out here and see if he can throw some strikes. All right. Well, he succeeded here. Let's maybe put him into a 5-run game where it's not quite a gimme, but there's a little more pressure. And then it's like, okay, let's put him in a 1-run game or let him start a game where now all of a sudden that pressure starts to amp up and everything matters a whole lot more. And let's let him start a non-league game and see how he handles himself when the leadoff guy gets on. I remember you had that great 7-inning game against Broughton. And none of that would have happened if they hadn't swung at a 3-0 pitch and hit into a double play in the first inning. Like if they take that pitch and you walk him, you probably don't get out of the first.
And I
also just little moments.
And I think that probably was the turn in my Arlington A's getting a chance to play tenure, because my first year, terrible. I mean, I've said it before on the podcast. Couldn't throw I hadn't pitched in a game in 6 years. Couldn't throw a strike. I was hitting people. I forgot how to be a pitcher and was terrible. And like you mentioned, obviously, I had work stuff too, so I couldn't make it. Second year, about midway through, it was like, it's kind of looking the same as the year before. And that Broughton game was kind of the, I guess for me at least, the confidence booster that I needed to like, okay, you're getting the consistent outs. You can maybe do this and to get those opportunities for sure. Yeah, that's funny.
So that game, I started in center, and I'll be dead honest with you. I remember the first inning, I think you hit a guy maybe, or you walked like 2 guys.
Yeah, something.
I swear to you, I remember thinking, oh no, this isn't looking good.
Yep.
Lucas, come on. Like, how many opportunities? You know how many opportunities you're going to get? And then all of a sudden, the double play happened, and then you were just on. And I'm like, okay, Lucas looks like a pretty darn good pitcher now. And he pitched like 6 or 7 innings that game. That was an eventful day. Is that the game where they basically hit Seth on purpose?
I believe I do believe that was.
Sounds familiar.
Yep. And then I think Lucas remembers what happened when we drove home that day.
I do. We murdered a deer.
Well, yeah.
Murdered a
Rest
deer.
in peace.
Yeah,
that was an eventful day. So, yep. All it costed for Lucas to be good at Taunton baseball was for me to total a car.
Small price to pay for salvation.
So Lucas had 6 innings pitched, 91 strikes, 3 runs, but only 1 was earned.
91 strikes?
Sorry, 91 pitches.
I was going to say,
55 strikes.
Smokes.
1 strikeout, only gave up 2 hits, walked 2 guys.
Heck yeah.
Love it.
1 strikeout. Wow,
Yeah.
let the defense do the work.
That's me, baby. That's me. I
I
love
think your
it.
K per 9 is better than mine.
The leadoff guy got on an E4, and then he walked the second guy, and then he hit the third guy.
Yeah, that's what it
bases
was. Yep.
We were off to a great start right away. It was almost over before it started.
Yep.
Oh,
we had an 8-6 double play that scored a run. When he popped that up and they tagged up, and
8-6
I have to
double
go
play.
back and
Interesting.
I was playing.
that's how it's
I think I was
put in
playing
here. I
center.
remember though that he hit into that double play. So
I think I
maybe
was
he made
playing
it down
center,
to
if I remember correctly, but I don't remember that. An 8-6 double play.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Huh. Oh yeah, I think I kind of do. I think the one guy thought I was going to throw it home, maybe. And I don't know. I think he just inched off a second a bit, and I just threw it behind him. I don't know. I can't remember it entirely.
He might not have tagged up, and maybe you threw it behind him.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Anywho, there are far more better baseball players to be talking about Arlington A's than myself. But I guess kind of last question that I have for you as far as Arlington goes is just, obviously we kind of have our pillar of dudes. You've mentioned a couple of them already. The Luke Doses, the Nathan Thomas, Brockhoff, Bullard. And I mean, I'm not going to go through every single person on the team that means something to the team because we'd be here all night. But how important is it to kind of have those veterans, the Nick Ducketts of the team too, the veterans that have been around on Arlington for a while and really understand how important this is. And when you have the high school kids coming up, maybe this is their first year on the team and kind of, knowing that you don't necessarily have to do as much of that mentoring because you have a lot of great guys on the team that are kind of just will do that without you having to say anything.
Yeah, it definitely makes my life a lot easier having some more adults around for some of these young guys. And I've been lucky that not just Deco, but like a lot of the guys you mentioned have been pretty dedicated to A's baseball over the years. And you know, a lot of our starting lineup is guys who schedule their life around baseball, not the other way around. So they're not, you know, I mean, they're choosing to miss family events, and a perfect example last year is we had the Gaylord game on Friday, and Nathan Thomas has a wedding in Iowa on Saturday, and comes and plays the Gaylord game and drives overnight like 3 in the morning and to Iowa for that wedding, and just those sorts of sacrifices,
The dedication.
that guys, yeah, the dedication and the sacrifices those guys have made to the team over the years. And like Nathan Hankey is last year playing, league games coming from Rochester, and yeah, I mean, it's I'm lucky to be a part of it and to have been in a position where I got to coach these guys in Legion, and even my first year coaching Legion. So my first Legion squad was Austin Brockhoff and Lucas Bullard and Travis Schmidt and Zach Weber, and Nick was on that team and Seth was on that team. And, future Arlington A, Logan Jorgensen, and future Arlington A, Dylan Pauly were on that squad. Colin Pouch was on that squad. He played for the A's. TJ Roseland. Just throwing it back to some of those names that have bygone, but getting the chance to coach them in Legion and really empowering them. Because I remember we finished 11-1 my first year on Legion, and that was a 500 varsity squad. And
we did a good year.
And I just remember, the empowerment of letting those guys just go out and play ball the way that they knew how to play, and kind of, turning them loose a little bit to play the game the way that they knew how. And even now, the A's identity is a lot of that of steering into, a little bit of our piranhas and pitching and defense game. And like Mitchell said, not being afraid to bunt guys over when you need to, and not even first to second, and putting pressure on the defense with our speed and kind of steering into our strengths.
Absolutely. Well, that's kind of all the questions that I had for you, Alex. Is there any other things that you wanted to talk about in regards to Townball, or really whatever you want? The floor is kind of yours right now.
I mean, Arlington still. I enjoyed my time in Gaylord, but I think the move to Arlington really instilled a lot of the Townball spirit in me, and in the camaraderie after the game too, of the ability to spend time together and not just enjoy our time between the chalk lines, but to enjoy the karaoke nights we've done and hang during the tournament and just some of the stories that we'll never forget because of that. But I do ultimately want to get into some Avalanche talk before we're
some Colorado Avalanche. Oh, you know what? There's always room for Colorado Avalanche talk on this podcast, Alex.
Well, first thing, I went to the Wild Avalanche game, and the Wild were dominating the start of that game, and Mikko Rantanen was just whining from the bench, and I was sitting across the ice from the bench, and you could hear him hollering the whole first period. He was whining until they finally
probably
got
had a good reason.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think they just raised crybaby captains over there. But also, you want to talk about being a great Avalanche fan. And I went down this rabbit hole the other day because I don't know why I got onto Eric Lindros. But Deco, are you familiar with the Eric Lindros saga?
No, I'm not. I'll be.
All right. So Eric Lindros was like or Lindros, however you want to pronounce it, was like the preeminent prospect of his generation. Like they're saying he's the next Gretzky, the next Lemieux, right? Connor McDavid before McDavid, Sidney Crosby before Sidney Crosby. And he goes number one overall to the Quebec Nordiques. And he's like, I am never playing for the Nordiques. Not going to happen. Trade me. Right. So he forces his way out of Quebec. And so the trade and so there's a lot of other drama because Quebec actually traded him to two different teams. They agreed to terms with both the Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Rangers, and it turned into a whole lawsuit and everything. So you got to go look up this rabbit hole, Pico, and learn a little bit about NHL history. But Quebec trades Eric Lindros to the Philadelphia Flyers, and in return, Quebec got Steve Duchesne, Peter Forsberg, who wound up being a Hall of Famer, right? Ron Hextall, Kerry Huffman, Mike Ricci, Chris Simon, Philadelphia's first-round pick in 1993, Philadelphia's first-round pick in 1994, and $15 million, right?
It's like a Herschel Walker.
Yeah, so now if you go to the Wikipedia page of this, you can go and see where these players wound up. So Duchesne ends up getting traded for Ron Sutter, and Sutter ends up getting traded to acquire Huey Krupp, who helps Colorado win the 1996 Stanley Cup, right? And then they end up trading this guy for Chris Dingman, who helped win the 2001 Cup. And then Forsberg was obviously part of both the 96 and 91 Cups. Ron Hextall winds up being traded for a first-round pick, which they used to draft Adam Deadmarsh, who helps them win the 1996 Cup. And then Deadmarsh gets traded in 2001 for some guy named Rob Blake, who helps win the 2001 Cup. And Steven Reinprecht was a part of that trade too. Huffman never really contributed anything, but then Ricci helped them win the 96 Cup and then gets traded in 1998 for Alex Tanguay. Helped win the 2001 Cup. Alex Tanguay, he's in the Avalanche Ring of Honor. Yeah. And Simon helped win the 96 Cup and then gets traded for Keith Jones in 1996. And then in 1998, Keith Jones gets traded for Sean Podine, who helps win the 2001 Cup. The first round pick in 1993, they used it to select Jocelyn Thibault, who winds up being traded to the Montreal Canadiens in 1995 as part of the deal to acquire Mike Keane and Dorton. Who else did they get in that deal?
Now the third most wins in NHL history after Marc-Andre Fleury just passed him, Patrick Waugh.
So you want to talk about being born with a horseshoe up your bottom and just getting lucky. Eric Lindros forces himself out of Quebec winds up with concussion issues and never really being that great. Meanwhile, Colorado builds a dynasty out of these trades. Mario Tremblay, for some reason, leaves Patrick Waugh in to get shelled. So he throws a hissy fit and forces his way out of Montreal and goes to Colorado. So, but all of this is domino effect from Eric Lindros not wanting to play for Quebec. And they get Patrick Waugh, Peter Forsberg, Alex Tanguay, Rob Blake, Adam Deadmarsh, and then the first round pick in 1994, they traded it to Toronto for Wendell Clark, Sylvain Lefebvre, and Landon Wilson. Lefebvre helped win the 96 Cup. Wendell Clark gets traded to the Islanders in a deal to acquire Claude Lemieux. You might have heard of him. He helps win the 1996 Cup. He gets traded to the Devils in 1999 to acquire Brian Ralston. Brian Ralston gets traded to the Boston Bruins in 2000. Who did they acquire from the Boston Bruins in 2000?
I'm going to take a stab and say some guy named Ray Bourque by chance.
Ray Bourque, whose number is now retired as he helped them win the 2001 Stanley Cup. So, this is just a random rabbit hole I went down because they were talking about the Eric Lindros saga, and I went to see where they traded him. I'm like, holy cow, they won 2 cups just because Eric Lindros didn't want to play in Quebec, and all of that is nonsense. And now on my NHL Be a Pro, I have to be drafted by the stupidest franchise in sports, the Colorado Avalanche.
Alex, the best.
Oh, so
the dopest.
I just said
that's
I've been
waiting
to bring up this. Yeah, I've been waiting since you asked me to come on the podcast to bring up this whole domino effect because it is fascinating to me. All of the players that they got out of that, and that 01 Cup team was unreal.
Yeah.
Do they also have? I'm pulling up the roster right now. I wanted to see Milan Hajduk was on that 01 team.
Yep.
Yeah. Joe Sakic was on that 01 team.
Yep.
So I remember a couple years after that was the year that they had Paul Kariya and Tamu Solani on their third line. And the team was just unreal.
Yeah. Had Adam Foote at the blue line, who was a baller for us for a little bit.
But the ultimate mic drop moment, Lucas, is who ended Patrick Waugh's career?
That would unfortunately be the Wild of Minnesota.
I remember watching that game and Zoltak to Zekaras for Brunette shoots, he scores! And the Minnesota Wild have upset the Colorado Avalanche. And that's the making of a great rivalry too. Is that 7-game series in 02-03. My first Wild playoff game in 2008. We went to Game 1.
Okay.
And I went to overtime, and I'm sitting last row, in section 222, on the opposite end of the ice. That Joe Sakic scores the game winner in overtime, and that arena got so quiet that I could hear him talking to his teammates on the opposite end of the ice. And we also went to Game 5 that year where they lost. They lost 3-2, but they scored with 8 seconds left, so it was really a 3-1 game. So they lost that series, and then, but I got to go the year that Mikhail Granlund scored in overtime in Game 3, and the Nino Niederreiter off the post and in overtime winner in Game 7. When Patrick Waugh popularized the pulling the goalie with more than a minute left, which is something I always thought should be done. I'm like, sometimes they get really good pressure. They should try doing that sooner in case it works. And that series is what led to instant replay in hockey, Nicholas, in case you didn't know, because Matt Duchene was offsides by a million miles at Game 4 and scored the game-tying goal, or maybe it was Game 5, but he was definitively offsides to score the game-tying goal in a game that Colorado ultimately won. So that series never even should have went 7. But
yeah, you're right, because if Matt Cook didn't Tyson Barrie, it wouldn't have happened.
Was that series?
That was that series, 13-14. Yeah. Yep.
Are you familiar with Adrian Dater?
Oh, yeah.
He was a Avalanche beat. So he wound up blocking me on Twitter because
really?
He said something about Matt Cook in Game 7. I'm like, oh my God, it was 4 games ago. Get over it. And so I got blocked by Adrian Dater on Twitter because of that. But then there's some other idiot from the Denver Post. I think his name is Mark Kisla. He
Oh,
always
that
writes
guy
about
is a
what,
clown. That
yeah,
guy's a clown.
well, he's wrote the same article twice.
Yeah.
Because he wrote it in 03 and then he wrote it again in 08 about how ugly and hideous the Wild uniforms are and how goony they are. Unfortunately, after he wrote it in 08, the Wild came out in game 3 and just gooned it up. I was like, why are you feeding right into this guy? That's terrible.
Oh, man. Well, I love some good Avalanche talk on here, Alex. That is always welcome. That is always welcome.
Yeah.
Has to be only positive, though.
And
That's the rule.
Obviously Colorado, their big rival has always been the Red Wings, but any real Wild fan knows that Colorado is the number one enemy. Not Chicago, not Dallas, not Nashville, not St. Louis, Colorado.
Yeah. Even I know that.
Give him the Patrick Waugh most goated quote of all time. I can't really hear what he's saying because I got my 2 Stanley Cup rings plugging my ears.
Patrick Waugh finished 1-1 in those Detroit Red Wings bouts, so it was too
Yeah.
bad. He actually he was gonna go fight. I think it was Hasek.
Okay.
But there was about to be a third one, and he tripped and fell down on his way there. But we almost got number 3. But how many of those players before this moment do you think Nick Duckett could have named? Do you think he could have named?
Well, I know
Ray
he could.
Bourque or Alex Tanguay.
I think
know
Ray
Ray
Bourque,
Bourque.
and I think Ray Bourque, Patrick Waugh for sure. I'm sure he's heard Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg.
Yes. When you quizzed him on the Patrick Waugh, I was gonna say Waugh, and then I figured it was also Ray Bourque. I wasn't 100% sure on either, but I at least know the big names.
That's great. That's great. Well, Alex, we appreciate you coming on the show. It was a great time chatting some Townball. Definitely we'll have you on again in the future. That would be great. We'd love to get a show going at maybe our tournament that Arlington hosts each year. That would be fantastic. That'd be pretty cool. I don't know how that would work, but we got time to figure it out. And folks, make sure I'll say it every podcast. Go to a Townball game. If you live in Minnesota, I guarantee whatever town you live in, there's probably a baseball team of amateurs out there that have a 9-to-5 job that would love for you to come watch. Go and play. Go and watch. Come to Iowa. Come watch the Arlington A's play in the Field of Dreams on May 18th. That's going to be an unreal experience. So really looking forward to that. But anyways, Alex, where can the fans find the official Alex Reichenbach Twitter account if they want to talk sports, talk some Colorado Avalanche, Townball, slide into your DMs to be on the team? Where can they find that at?
Well, I'm on Twitter on X now at Coach Reichy, Reichy. If you can't remember how to spell that, you can always just go to the Arlington A's X page, which is at Arlington A's MN, and at the top it links to my Twitter. So that's mainly there for teams that want to schedule games. But if you want to come follow me, like some of my high school students have figured out the Coach Reichy account, and so they make burners and tweet stupid stuff at me like, "Yo, Coach Reichy, what you doing? How'd you lose that game?" And so there gets to be quite a bit of roasting on there. But we're always willing to talk sports at Coach Reichy.
It's great. Great to hear. If you want to follow Nick or I, you can follow us at Doetkott or at Lucas_Dorton. If you want to follow the Twitter page, folks, at Dorton, WW Podcast, at DND_podcast for that. Once again, Alex, thank you for coming on. For episode 78 was a great time. As for Nick's, Coach Reichy, and myself, until next time, we are out.